Welcome everybody to the webcast today. Today we're talking about keeping it human within a customer segmentation model with Sandra Morris from Datadog. I'm so excited to see you all tune in with us. I hope that the weather wherever you are is much better than the weather in London and Dublin. Sandra and I were just chatting about how we're very disappointed with the summer. Hopefully today's webcast is going to bring a little bit of interest and sunshine in every Wednesday. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. As a member of the Customer Success Network, to whom Sandra is a very dear friend and a real fan of Datadog, I'm so excited to welcome her to our webcast today. Sandra, thank you so much. Sandra is an international customer success leader with experience in a multitude of industries. These include financial services and the IT industry. Today, she heads the EMEA customer success team at Datadog. In there, she makes sure that the team is ready for success across all the different segments of customers that they have established. A long-term friend of the Customer Success Network, Sandra is an admired speaker at various conferences and events, where she shares her top insights on building and running a world-class customer success organization. I'm sure we all find it hard to imagine being able to manage your team and resources without a basic way to segment your customers and focus the attention of CSMs to a particular cohort. The segmentation models we see range from single-layer geographical segmentation all the way to horizontal vertical segmentation, using a multitude of approaches to allow each customer to achieve their desired outcome. But with the sophistication of a highly effective segmentation model, how do we ensure that we treat each customer with the attention and care they expect? And how do we make sure that our segmentation model remembers individuals are humans before they're stakeholders? Sandra, I can't wait to hear from you about this today. As you all know, the webcast is hosted by the CustomerSuccessNetwork.org. I'm your usual host, Morika Georgieva. I'm a part of the Customer Success Network and the Customer Success team at Beamery. We try to keep this webcast as interactive as possible. As usual, we're going to have two pauses, one towards the middle of the webcast and another one towards the end. Use the Q&A function to just ask questions. As they come through, we're going to answer them in one of the two pauses that we make. We're broadcasting live in our workplace community. You'll be able to see the webcast there in future and also continue the conversation there. And without any further ado, Sandra, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Marika. It's an absolute pleasure. Forgive me if I stop for water every now and again. My throat, due to the weather, has started to cave in last night. But I suppose today it's all about kind of interaction and talking about customer segmentation. It doesn't sound very exciting from the very outset, and I was speaking to Marika last week about this, but as we get into it, hopefully you'll start to see that there's a lot more things that people can do within a customer success environment in order to make it more exciting for your customers and more exciting for your customer success managers as well. So today we are going to be looking at various different kind of aspects of the customer segmentation model. So first and foremost, what is it? So that we all kind of have a clear understanding of what it looks like. Why would we use one? And then kind of how would you go about building it from scratch? Or if you have one in place today, but it's maybe not effective, how do you then start to reimagine it? We're going to stop then for a Q&A. And then after that, we're going to kind of look at how you keep it human within that model. And that's, to me, is the exciting part, and where you can really set out how you want to have your customer success teams and customer success model kind of really play to your strengths of your company. And then kind of just looking at some best practices on how to ensure customer satisfaction. And then we'll stop towards the end for Q&A too. So hopefully you'll enjoy the next while talking about customer segmentation. And I suppose the very first part is kind of imagine yourself as if you were on a stage all your customers are in front of you. They're all raising their hands. They're all looking for attention. They're all kind of wondering, when are you going to get to them personally? And I suppose that is the goal behind a customer segmentation model. The idea being that, what would you do in that situation? And even today, you walk in, you've been handed a portfolio if you're a customer success manager yourself, or if you're a leader, you're handed this portfolio of customers that are already onboarded, but there's all these new customers that are coming as well. That is the situation that most people in customer success are actually looking at as we speak. And what do you do? Well, I suppose in other industries or in other environments, it's kind of like a triage situation. And you're looking at ways to help manage the flow of people, the flow of information, the flow of business as best as possible. So I suppose segmentation is all about that. How do you kind of look to manage the massive amount of people or customers or situations that you have in front of you? So as we go through the slides, I'm kind of hoping to walk you through how we do this and how we can also maybe set it up for scale in the future as well. So I suppose, as I said, what is a customer segmentation model? Well, it kind of organizes your customers. So back at that stage, looking down at all your customers, how do you go about organizing them in such a way so that you can interact with them in a manner that they want or that you want to provide for them? And it's all about dividing them into subgroups. Now, majority of customer segmentation models kind of will look at various different ways to segment them. So it could be done in demographics, it could be by industry, it could be geographic, it could be behaviors or psychographic. So I suppose at this stage, I kind of want to kind of give you a little bit of information into what each of them would be. So demographics, for instance, we're very much kind of completing demographic surveys every single day of our lives. It could be a census taking place where we're stating what age bracket we're in, we're stating what gender we are, we're stating what level of education we might have. So that's kind of all demographic information that some businesses kind of look to segment their customers on. A second one would be in relation to industry. It could be, and I've seen this in companies in the past too, that it could be somebody dedicated to looking after government accounts, or it could be educational sector. It could be manufacturing. It could be professional services or tech SaaS startups. The way that you would kind of directly kind of take them out and say, okay, we're going to manage this set of accounts by this customer success manager in this particular way. And that essentially is what a customer segmentation model is. One that is very kind of maybe relevant within Europe would be the geographic one. And this is fairly straightforward when we kind of consider our particular region, based on language, based on time zone, based on cultural differences between the different countries. Like, you know, a lot of businesses and customer success leaders will look to do a segmentation model or a strategy based on geographic lines. And that's kind of where we will see groups like UK and Ireland is treated as one particular market. It could be the Nordics, it could be the French-speaking countries, the German-speaking countries. And that's kind of also a quick way of segmenting any kind of customer install base. Then we kind of get more to the behavioral side of things. And this kind of is looking at various different aspects as well. And I suppose as consumers ourselves, we sometimes forget that we're actually segmented in our day-to-day lives as well. And this could be the likes of, let's say, convenience stores, the Spars, the 7-Elevens, stock certain products for the person that's always on the go. So around your office building, the local newsagents or convenience stores that you would have certain products, whether it's lunches on the go, it could be breakfast on the go, specifically targeting you and dealing with what we want and meeting our needs. So the behavior pattern there is looking at who's coming into the shop, what kind of custom that they're going to be looking for, and meeting and exceeding our needs. The same can be said across the majority of retail, whether it's in duty frees, it could be at your local supermarket and you're doing your weekly shop. At the checkout, they're going to have chocolates and everything else, because the behavior is known as kind of that impulse buy. What is that last minute kind of purchase that you're going to do? And they segment certain customers, the quick lanes that have appeared in practically every supermarket in the last couple of years always have some form of chocolate or additional items that you're going to grab and put into your basket, even though you only walked in to get milk and bread. So it's very much a behavioral. So from a customer success point of view, understanding some of the behaviors that our customers are showing is also going to be relevant for when we're looking at how we would potentially go across segmenting our customers and supporting them in the future. Psychographic ones was kind of new to me. And I suppose I was discussing this one with Marika last week as well. It kind of piqued my interest because I hadn't heard about it before. But I suppose the psychographic aspect of it is understanding the why somebody buys. And I suppose we're so attuned to understanding what they've bought and where they've bought from that we sometimes forget to ask ourselves the why behind it all. Like, you know, what encouraged them to purchase your service or your product at that given time. So if you look at maybe the likes of insurance, like, you know, did they have a break-in into their property? Is that why they've just bought house insurance? Is it that they're concerned about a break-in in the future? Is that why they bought it? So from that perspective, like, you know, it's understanding the why they behind it. It's also looking at ways of, I suppose, whereabouts maybe in their current lifestyle that they currently are. You might find that, like, you know, a teenager, an 18-year-old is not the most likely customer of a Porsche. Chances are it's somebody a little bit slightly older, but has been very successful in their position, and they would like to treat themselves for a Porsche. Likewise, Louis Vuitton. These are high ticket items. And in general speaking, very niche products as well. But the psychographics behind it all is why they buy. Is it their lifestyle? Is it a change in circumstances? Is it concern that they're purchasing by or for the product? Is it like an insurance policy? Is it to treat themselves? Is it meeting a certain pain or concern that they're going to have? And later we're going to be talking about why a customer might actually buy a product or a service from you as a company. And as a customer success manager, how you would then have to meet the needs of that particular customer. And I suppose from that, it's just interesting for me to kind of look at the different kind of ways that we can segment in our customer install base. The majority of the time, though, we actually go and, I suppose, use a combination of all of them or some of them in various different degrees. I've worked in a company in the past where, like, you know, we have divided it out by geography to begin with, because I was looking after Europe, APAC, and the North American market. So I had teams focused on the various different regions. I then broke it down into kind of various different ways of where do they purchase? Like, you know, was it through an alliance? Was it through a channel partner? Was it direct? Was it through self-service? Then kind of applying various different segmentation models kind of to apply to where they actually purchase from and the medium that they applied that to. Then on top of that, it can also look at different levels of the behavior and whether that's high touch or low touch. And we'll be touching on that one a little bit more as well. But it's good for us to kind of step back and kind of figure out, well, number one, what is a segmentation model? And for those that I suppose aren't that familiar with it, to then realize that we're actually involved in segmentations every single day as a consumer, as well as a customer success manager or customer success leader. So I suppose the next question then is, why would you actually need one? And that's quite important too. So from that perspective, let's just move on. Sorry, skipping ahead there, Ami. Why do you need a segmentation model? Well, there's a couple of different reasons, and I suppose I came up with for this as well. The most important, if you remember, is kind of that whole triage. How do you deal with everybody asking you the same question at the same time? And how do you kind of cope with that situation? And first and foremost, as a leader, I want to make sure that I align resources that are best fit to meet the job and meet the job in hand. So with me, it's all about, okay, well, where do I put my customer success managers to deal with certain types of customers in certain situations and get the best result for both the customer as well as my company. So from that perspective, it's divide and conquer. And your most challenging accounts, you might put your most experienced customer success manager on those accounts. The second part of that is kind of like, in terms of time management, how much time do you need to spend with certain accounts? Whether they be high touch, low touch, it's about prioritizing the tasks needed for those particular accounts based on a certain customer segment. Now, these are very high level, general kind of ideas behind it, because obviously life takes over and there will be certain aspects of the life cycle of the account where there might be more engagement. It might be a case of early stages and you're in the adoption stage for a customer. There's going to be a lot of involvement, but as soon as they're kind of up and running, there might be less hand-holding or involvement in the account. And then there's a bit of a flurry again towards the end of the contract period, if it's kind of got a subscription behind it all. So it's about time management, and it's about prioritizing the tasks needed for that particular customer bucket within that segment. The other part of that is, I suppose, the appropriate user experience. And I suppose what I would like to maybe give as an example with this one would be the banking sector. So you might walk into your bank and you'll see automatically that banking business customers need to go off to the left, while consumer customers kind of go straight forward and start queuing. And there's a different user experience there based on the type of customer that the bank has. Likewise, again, we're all very familiar with airports and the airline industry. Like, when you have a business or first class ticket, you get to board the plane first. And you're greeted and you're shown your seat and you get handed the champagne or the orange juice. And then everybody else that's in economy joins after that. And you find your own seat, generally 9 times out of 10. Likewise, again, same with the furniture. And I suppose, to give you an example, the IKEA or Argos, if you're familiar with both those brands, a lot of it is based on self-service, that you go, you get your code, you go to a machine, you find out where it is, or you pay for it all online or through the computer in the shop, and then you wait for it to be given to you. In IKEA, you walk around all the showroom, you pick things off the shelf yourself and go to the cash desk and pay for it. So that's a particular user experience that they deliberately set out to do. The IKEA experience, though, is interesting because they try to navigate you through their showrooms in order to get that experience of what you could achieve if you bought X amount of products before you actually get to the marketplace. So it's kind of very, very similar that when we're kind of looking at segmentation, that we look at applying a user experience depending on the particular customer segment and how you actually look at how you break up the different accounts in front of you, how you want to treat your top paying customers in certain industries or in certain countries versus maybe some people that might be paying a lot less than that and would prefer a self-service model. So it's about applying different user experiences based on the groups that you decide to put into place. A key word for me is scalability. And I suppose with this, I was told a long time ago, never touch anything that won't scale. And I suppose that is quite important, I suppose, in the customer success arena. We're all very fortunate to be in a growing market and a growing profession, in the sense that the customer success role is constantly evolving, constantly delivering new expectations to businesses, and is getting a lot more exposure across the globe in all different industries. And even within the customer success manager umbrella, there's various different options and roles, and different types of interaction with our customers. So for me, it is about scale, that when I'm looking at a model, that I'm looking at something that is going to be very relevant for customers, very relevant for my business unit, very relevant for my customer success managers, and that it will scale easily so that I'll know that as we grow even more customers, that I'll be able to apply the same principles, and they will 9 times out of 10 achieve the same user experience with some minor tweaks along the way. I shouldn't have to rewrite my entire customer segmentation model every single quarter. It shouldn't be that way. If it is that way, well, then you might not necessarily be on the right one. So it's about looking and making sure that what you're putting in place today is something that's going to grow and grow with you, and something that evolves to make sure that we exceed what we set out to achieve. The exciting part for me is the differentiation part. And I suppose going back to the user experience, we've all been consumers. Businesses set out to be different from each other. Nobody sets out to do the exact same as everybody else. We're all looking for new business. We're looking to retain our customers, and that's a core aspect of customer success. So when we look at it, the difference between Ryanair versus BA, do you want the self-service kind of straightforward get from A to B, or do you want something with some options in there, such as British Airways? They could give you business class, they could give you premium economy, they could give you economy. The same with any customer success model. We need to set out what it is that we want to set ourselves out to be different from every other competitor. And I suppose my team motto that I have within Datadog is that I ask my customer success managers to make a difference, but to be the difference as well. So I want them to deliberately set out themselves as being different to every other account manager or customer success manager that company or that particular customer is engaged with, and make sure that they're kind of the difference as well, and bring that personalization to it. Likewise, again, differentiation and competitive advantage is linked very much hand in hand. With competitive advantage, it is kind of like, you're trying to make sure you're blocking any other competitors coming in by delivering the most optimal service and user experience that your customer is going to achieve. Now, even though none of this refers to anything got to do with pricing or discounts or other terms and conditions, this is all things that you can actively do as a customer success leader or a customer success manager to make sure that we're being different and at the same time exceeding our customer expectations. And that's important too. Now, I'm not saying that this is an exhaustive list. It's not. There are plenty of other reasons, and it might be interesting to hear some of your reasons later when we do the Q&A. I know Marika kind of has a poll ready to kind of go to kind of for you to select to see whether you actually have a customer segmentation strategy or model in place as it is. And Marika, if you want to even launch that poll, we've got a few more slides to go before the Q&A, but it might be interesting to start capturing some of the information in there. So I need to clear it off my screen. Fantastic. So yeah, the next slide, I suppose, is all about, I suppose, moving you now into, well, how do we go about constructing one? Now that we know what it is, why it's needed, what we would potentially gain out of it, like, you know, how would you even start, or how would you even start kind of reassessing what you currently have in place? And this is important too, that you actually do kind of step back and look and see, well, what is it that we're doing? Is it what other people are doing? Is it effective? Is it not effective? So first and foremost, look and see whether you want to break it down by industry. And as I kind of touched on previously, some of this is a financial services sector, very heavily regulated. Requests for tender come in, very detailed paperwork is required. Like, so you have a separate stream or a separate team or group of customer success managers that focus solely in on maybe the financial services sector, or it could even be government and educational, because the two of them kind of go hand in hand. I've experience of working alongside a financial services team. It's a very, very unique kind of situation that kind of I've experienced in one of my previous companies. It was a very, very small team, but they would literally jet from Hong Kong on a Monday to Buenos Aires on a Thursday to then be back in London for the Monday morning for another kind of round of talks with one big bank. And granted, they were a fairly substantial bank and global bank, but at the same time, it took a lot of effort for a very small team to actually make sure that they were meeting and exceeding the needs of that particular banking customer. So, like, you know, it's looking at how you apply those resources and the costs involved for them personally, because obviously there was a lot of travel involved, there was a lot of risk and reward for the company, but at the same time, it's understanding how you're going to put your resources and aligning them with the actual needs of the customer. The next kind of one would be in relation to being geographical, and as I've touched on before, everybody in Europe is quite familiar with this one. Most of the time, kind of as you're starting off and you might only have one or two customer success managers across EMEA, like, you know, that's perfectly fine. But as you grow and as you scale, you need to start bringing in some additional kind of support, whether it be language support, whether it be time zone. So in Datadog, I look after all of EMEA. So I would have different language capabilities within the team. We would also then look at, and I've seen it in other companies as well, in relation to time zone and cultural differences, that the customer success managers that I would have working in the Middle East would actually work Sunday through Thursday to align with the working week in that region. Likewise, again, like some of my language customer success managers might work the working week of the market that they're in and would take bank holidays in line with the market that they're in too, whether that's the French or the German bank holidays, or it could be bank holidays in the Nordics. It's about identifying what your customers' needs are and looking at as I said, the language, or it could be the working week, or it could be some cultural issues or cultural areas that you might want to align with and apply your resources for that too. Another one that kind of I use on a very regular basis, and it's not necessarily the best way, but it's obviously the most simplest way, is to also look at revenue spend. But this doesn't take into account, I suppose, maybe unspent revenue that the customer hasn't actually given you yet, or you might not even be aware of. It's a very quick way of segmenting your customers, and grouping them so that you have your lower spend customers in one bucket, and you can apply user experience to that. And then you could have your higher spend customers in a different bucket with maybe a more personalized approach, maybe more face-to-face interaction. So like, it is a quick, ready reckoner, but I wouldn't recommend it to be the only way that you would look at segmenting your customers, because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's kind of it doesn't necessarily mean that it's kind of the right way to approach that particular customer, because it's an indication of what they're spending now, not what their lifetime spend is or what the potential spend is. The benefit of using it is that it is quick, and it also transcends borders. And kind of when we've talked about geographical kind of segments, like, revenue spend means that you can look at one customer that might be in Poland the same way as the customer that might be in Ireland, and going from that perspective too. So it is a very quick way of segmenting, but I would never recommend it on its own. And I suppose that the next part of that then is the high-low touch, and understanding kind of from that perspective as well, like what customers that require a very, very high touch. So from that perspective, it's kind of applying a user experience to that too. And then the last one is the purchasing medium. Eventually, sorry, it's clicking off again. And that kind of, as said, could be self-service, where they direct sales, where they channel sales. How are you going to segment them? And I've kind of worked in companies that has been very channel heavy, with a small amount of direct. And we would manage some of those end customers directly ourselves from a customer success point of view, but we didn't manage the self-service customers. Likewise, again, in Datadog, a lot of it is direct and very little channel, but we would manage our direct customers and our self-service customers in a very similar fashion as well, in that we would be kind of applying various different customer success models to them. So I think at this stage, it's the Q&A. So Marika, I'd be interested to find out the poll results as well.
Sandra, thanks so much for a super exciting first part. I think it was very important for everybody to understand not just what a customer segmentation model is, but also how to go about setting it up from nothing. And I think that was very useful to our listeners today, because 33% of them only have a formalized customer segmentation model, 67 of them do not. So I do hope that after this webcast, in the next 20 to 25 minutes, you have much more to work off, and everybody will have a segmentation model. And to even think that there's a second part where you're going to go into the nitty-gritty of how we keep it human. I'm so excited to hear that as well. A couple of questions. I was scribbling notes while you were speaking because I had so many kind of thoughts coming in my head. Something that I found very interesting is you mentioned that one of the things that you can segment people on, customers on, is their market. So I'm very interested in finding out inside that market, what do you take into consideration? Like, how do people, differ? How do markets differ the way you would segment your customer base? Is there something in particular that you think about that might be different in the Nordic market compared to the Spanish market, for example, or the English one?
Well, I suppose what we see currently is that in some markets, we actually have a lot of clusters of similar companies.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's say the Nordics would have a lot of gaming companies in there. So it's applying kind of the same best practices that you would have.
Mm-hmm.
Then bear in mind, other markets kind of are pan-industry, kind of various different types of companies altogether. But making the example being the Nordics, it would be gaming, and then just understanding that particular industry and that challenge as well, like that they're going through, that it's very much a case of trying to get new products to market as quickly as possible without any kind of defaults or faults in them.
I think that's super useful. Thank you for that. Another thing I had in mind, when we start segmenting our customers, it's becoming very clear to us why this is important for customer success. Do you think that when we construct segmentation, that segmentation should be the same across sales and CS and products and someone else? Or is it the case that it's more useful for CS to have their own segmentation compared to the rest of the functions in the business?
I suppose there needs to be some alignment, but that's not to say that it has to be the same across the board. And I suppose it all depends on how post-sales, who else is involved with the customer. Like, whether it is sales retain some involvement and are still kind of responsible for the commercials, or whether customer success take on those commercial responsibilities as well. So yes, I would say that there needs to be some alignment, but it doesn't have to be 100% of the time. There's pros and cons for each of it. I think a common language, though, at least would be in the back office. So your support, your marketing, your finance, those functions, I think, should be aligned with the customer success kind of strategy and vocabulary as well. Not necessarily in a pre-sales environment, though.
And that makes total sense. Susan here is also reaching with a question. For the lowest touch customers or self-service, what are some good learning tools you've used or heard of to set up the self-service onboarding FAQs, for example?
I suppose that would be a lot of your documentation, and some of that would be your documentation libraries, but also then feeding some documentation, whether it's YouTube, whether it's white papers, it could be best practices and tips. I've heard various different companies kind of set up platforms for specific customers with all of these kind of documentation kind of in one place for them to have. It could be sent via an email. It could be sent via kind of, I suppose, a welcome card with some information in there as well, a kind of handwritten note to welcome them to the company. Just anything to kind of get through the message that we welcome their business, and we're there to support them as best we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think everyone's very excited to move over to the next part of the webcast. So over to you.
Sure. So on this part, it's the part that gets me most excited. I suppose it's talking about how we kind of build on that whole idea of partnership and kind of make sure that we're ensuring customer success. So from that perspective, we're going to focus on how we're going to build champions and partners. And these kind of are the three areas that I would love to kind of just briefly touch in on. So I look for making sure that you're identifying who the key stakeholders are within an account. But on top of that, you also have it multi-threaded. In our industry, and we're a tech SaaS company, we look at potentially the CFO, the CTO, and the DevOps engineers, who are the end users of our platform and of our service. However, our CTO could be the technical buyer, and our CFO is the economical buyer. So realistically, a customer success manager needs to have good, strong relationships with those three different types of customers and users within one account. So it's about building the partnerships with each of them individually. It's also kind of understanding what they want out of the relationship. And that's the relationship with you, as well as the service, as well as the company, and understanding what their goals are. And we often talk internally about like understanding that a DevOps engineer might want to be promoted on the back of using the service that they're purchasing from you. Or a CTO might want to get global recognition to roll this out globally, from his CEO. So it's about understanding, taking the time to understand that. Anybody in my team or anybody that's heard me speak before talks about me, has heard about me kind of talking about stalking. And I mean it in the most positive sense. I want all of my customer success managers to know their customer accounts inside and out. I want them to know their business. I want them to know the people. I want them to check them out on LinkedIn, GitHub, Crunchbase, Twitter. A lot of our customers wouldn't necessarily look at their emails morning, noon, and night because they get slammed by so many tech SaaS companies, all trying to sell them different software, different services. But we have found that actually they tweet an awful lot. And engineers are very quick to tweet or complain about something, but also praise about something. So it's about following them on Twitter. Sometimes it's about sending them an SMS. It might sound old school, but they're more likely to respond to a text message than they are to an email. But likewise, again, it's not just the contacts, it's the company. Set up Google and Yahoo finance alerts. See what's going on. I remember being on a call with a very, very large UK company a couple of years ago. And it was a weekly call that I ran and said, congratulations on winning that big contract in North Carolina. And they were there going, what? And I was able to tell them what had happened because I was watching the company and following them on LinkedIn. But my contacts had no idea that that would happen, that had just been announced. And it was a big PR release that they had done. So stalk your accounts, stalk the companies, stalk the contacts, but in the most positive sense. And on top of that, the third part of building the partnership is knowing the business use case. So here you're looking at building partnerships and relationships, understanding, do your research on the account and on the person, but then understand why the business use case is there. And we use the 3 whys. The 3 whys: why now, why do anything, why buy your product at this moment in time. So when you understand those 3 key areas, and this is even before you fully even engage with the customer or start to really ramp the relationship, you can do this. There's nothing holding you back from doing it at all. And I would ask my customer success managers to do this as soon as they get an account. They start their research and move on from there. So kind of, what does success actually look like? My system is deciding to go asleep again. Oops. Got it. So to me, this is the secret of success. It's straightforward. Have they adopted the product? Not just deploying it and forgetting about it. They have to be engaged in the platform. They have to be engaged with the service. On top of that is their expansion opportunities, and that's through upsells or cross-sells. And then on top of that, the third pillar of that would be advocacy. Are they prepared to do a testimonial, to be a reference to a new customer, a new prospect? Are they prepared to tweet and do videos? That to me is identifying whether we're being successful in building that partnership relationship with that customer. And nothing kind of falls short of that. That's the ultimate aim here, to get all our customers to that level where they are adopted, they are actively engaged on a daily basis or on a very weekly basis, very regular basis. There may not be expansion all the time, but at the same time, there's plans, you know about them. You're planning for 6 months or 18 months down the road when something else might happen, and you're looking towards that project. And are they prepared to turn around to somebody beside them on the bus or at a conference and say, hey, I use your product and I stand over it, it's brilliant. That to me is what success is, and that's what we should be aiming for. So I know kind of we're coming towards the end, but how do you ensure customer satisfaction? Frequency of touch. It's all about how often do you want to engage with your accounts? Is it weekly, monthly, or quarterly? Set that out. Get agreement with your customer. Make sure that it is known and it's stuck to. How do you want to interact with them? We very much favor face-to-face where we can, where it's reasonably possible. But if that's not possible, we use Zoom constantly, and we use our videos. It doesn't matter whether we're in the office, we're in a hotel kind of lobby, if we're at a conference, we do it there too. We talk to each other via Zoom video constantly. We try to limit email where we can. And know your business. Have the consultancy approach. Be Audible Ready, which is something that has kind of grown out of the US sports industry, being Audible Ready, but getting ready to kind of say, hey, you know what, this is what I heard, what is happening? What about this? Asking genuine questions and being curious about what they're using our product to do and understanding their pain points. Be aware of competitors, be aware of the industry that you're working in, and who else is bringing out something new, and being interested and curious to know what that is. Nature of the interaction. So I had fun with Marika on this one because I was there going, our customers are generally very, very informal, very casual in their approach and style. And then we talked about the difference between working with tech engineers and the difference with working with banking accounts and banking customers. So I deliberately went and got this picture just to prove this point. So how we interact with our customers is not very, very formal unless we're discussing the final details of a commercial plan. But generally speaking, you want to set the tone that it's quite casual, it's quite open, it's interactive, and it's engaging. But in some businesses, I have to respect that, it needs to be a little bit more formal. But you, I suppose, play to the audience that you're in front of. If it needs to be more formal, well then be very formal with your interaction. CSM account ratio, always another hot topic about how many accounts should a customer success manager have. And really it all depends on the mix and the amount of interaction and everything else that's gone before. You could have maybe one to many if it's a lower tier or lower spending account. It could be maybe a lot less accounts if they're a lot high value accounts. And lastly, it should be intimacy. At Datadog, we do an awful lot of customer-facing events, and these would be our customer summits, which we absolutely adore. We do them a couple of times each year, and we try to get all our customers kind of in, and kind of make sure that they're kind of engaged with our product teams, with our exec teams, with our customer success teams. Likewise, again, we do a lot of industry events. We also love to do case studies, whether that's the written format, and then we have the video testimonials as well. So these are all kind of areas that you could look at to help improve how you deliver customer satisfaction within your segmentation model. And finally, I suppose the last part is kind of ensuring that to keep it human yourself. Likewise again, make a difference and be the difference. Be personally known, liked, and trusted. Make sure that your accounts actually know who you are and what value that you bring to them. Regardless of what your segmentation looks like, you should still be making a difference every day. Marika.
That was amazing, Sandra. Thank you so much. I'm never going to forget make the difference and be the difference. I've written this down and I can already see this sentence populating the LinkedIn of a number of our members. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have some time left for questions. Sam here is raising a very interesting point, asking, do all top tier customers want the consultancy approach? I read somewhere that true customer success is when the product and wraparound support is intuitive, and consultancy-based CS is no longer needed. Better product and onboarding equals less consultancy required. What do you think?
I would think yes, that I would agree with that if the company environment stayed exactly the same as when they actually bought it.
Mm-hmm.
reality is companies change, businesses change, their reality changes. So does ours. So does our product. So if it's a one-time buy for that moment in time, that's fine. But if you're buying a service or a product that's meant to go beyond a day's life, well, then you have to remain a consultant. You have to change with their change, their environment, as well as their own product and service changes.
I think that's really true, and I 100% agree with the point of view that it very much depends on your company and the business where you are, because I can 100% imagine previous businesses that I've worked, when you get a product that's configurable and quiet, nicely done out of the box, and essentially is there to continue your business's operations the way they continued up until now, and there's nothing to change, then that's a perfect approach. However, we have other tools which are designed to bring a big change to the way you operate. So Beamery, for example, is one of them, where we come into businesses to make their talent acquisition departments very proactive, and then people expect us to tell them what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And if we don't tell them, then there's a different conversation of, well, why didn't you tell me that was wrong, the wrong thing to do? So I definitely think there's a lot of place for both of these approaches. And Sam, thank you so much for bringing this up. Cindy here says that she'd also say large enterprise customers with long-term contract would still appreciate a long-term CSM. Exactly, Cindy, that's exactly true. There's the joke about your data geeks and tech people and the banking folk stance here. Everybody is different, but everybody appreciates care and attention. So that's very, very valid. Another question we have, how is it possible for a CSM with 100 and so accounts to know each of them and research each of them in depth?
It's about their own time management. And like, obviously walking in is a bit difficult, but to be honest, the way that I would look at it is that when a new customer success manager joins my team, and I might hand him or her kind of up to 100 accounts, I'm expecting for them to go through those accounts over the next month to 2 months and familiarize themselves with it. And part of that is doing the background account research and doing the due diligence on the account. Because the more they know about that account before they pick up the phone or go visit, the better the interaction is going to be, because they're going to be more informed. And the customer will know immediately from their interaction that they've taken the time to actually do the research on them and on the account and on the current contract of business as well.
Yeah. Very true, thank you. Another question we have, so what do you think about disclosing your customer segmentation model to your customers and saying you are in this tier and you're in the other tier and you're in the third tier? So there are some theories which say that this is motivational, because when customers want to do well on the tool, they want to move up to the next tier. What's your thinking there?
We actually disclose some of that on our website as it is, as part of some of our plans. We say that you get a dedicated customer success manager in one of our plans. We do also apply some customer success, dedicated customer success management on some of our other plans, but that's kind of on a, I'm going to say an ad hoc basis, but it's technically not. But we do disclose some of it. One thing I'm not a fan of is saying, hey, you're top tier or you're lower tier, and disclosing that, because at the end of the day, as I said, just segmenting people based on revenue spend is kind of a case of buyer beware, because you're not looking at the potential, whether that's a brand potential. It could be a very strategic account for you to have as a partner. You're not looking at future spend. You're not looking at future relationship and alliance. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture where we do actually disclose some, but we don't disclose other, because we don't want to approach it in the fact of ignoring any customer. We value kind of all our customers. We try to treat them as fairly as we can, in the scale that we have, and we apply different practices, but we're still available to open, still available and open to communicate with every single customer of ours, regardless of whether they spend the lowest amount or the highest amount.
Definitely. That's such an inspirational thing to say, and way to conclude our webcast. And as you were talking, I just remembered something that I heard at a conference recently, that the thing with all big data is that it comes from a very small place, and this is the past. So how do we get all of that data and use it to form the future? And you've said here exactly like how we need to think about where these people are going to be in 6 months or 7 months or 8. I think we have time for one last question. Thank you, Cindy, for bringing that up. Are you in favor of ideally having a CSM for every single customer?
Yes, I am. And like, you know, it still comes down to how you scale that, what the ratios are. But yes, I do believe that we should have a customer success manager for every account. And then you work out the ratios. And every customer should know who their customer success manager is as well.
Yeah, amazing.
Like to be trusted.
Definitely. I'll finish off by reading one of Sam's sentiments. Thank you, Sam, for sending this. He says, thank you very much for your thoughts on that. Sounds like the consulting is a nature of the consultancy itself, and this is what it's important. It's more developmental and less problem solving. You have also plenty of thank yous sent from our viewers and listeners today. Sandra, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. It's been very interesting and exciting to hear not only how to construct a segmentation model, but also how to keep that relationship with our customers going, and how to make sure that we're also looking in the future. It's been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who has been with us today. Wishing you a fantastic rest of your month of June. We're going to see you again in a month's time. Watch out for the next registration link. See you very soon.
Thank you, Marika. Bye, everybody.